Is my good friend Leon Dutch here, by the way, you know? Let me get this ginned up. That is the fear of every introducer, by the way, you know, that you're going to really mess up somebody's name. It happens. It happens. Did everybody get a green sheet?
Yes.
How many of you are familiar with crucial conversations? That's great. That's great. This is supposed to be a very participative TED Talk kind of a presentation. So if you just raised your hand, I want to hear from you. What did you think? Somebody over here who's familiar with the book. I saw a hand. All right.
Very, very helpful.
Helpful.
Yeah, very helpful.
Very, very helpful. Somebody over on this side. Yes, ma'am. You and I have talked already.
Yeah, I've been through the formal training and found it useful in all aspects of my life, from my husband to my employees.
This is not the formal training, so I'm sorry about that. No, I'm not, because it's more relaxed and it's free. But what she said is very important. How many of you are in a relationship? This will help. How many of you have parents? This will help. How many of you have kids? This will help. How many of you have employees or are an employee? Yeah, this will help. So that's one of the reasons why I wanted to bring this to you today. And because we're in the education business, we always talk about these things, right? But I want you to understand what makes certain conversations crucial. I want you to be able to explain why it's really you that we're dealing with and not them. And we're going to practice some things before we're done. So this makes sense, or should make sense to you, what we're going to do today. Now, the premise of the book, and I highly recommend the book to you. And hold it up this time. Maybe one more time I'll hold that up. But it says the key skill is what? Didn't you love it when the professor used to ask that and the answer was right over his head? The key skill is what? The capacity to skillfully address emotionally and politically risky items. We deal with politically risky items all the time. All the time. And so we're going to talk about some really important stuff here. There we go. So what is a crucial conversation? It is a conversation where opinions vary, stakes are high, and emotions run strong. Now, why would I have picked this picture to illustrate a crucial conversation? Do you think opinions are varying in this situation? It appears. Do you think the stakes are high? If you're the coach of Baylor's women's basketball team, maybe your job's on the line, you know. What about emotions? Any keys to what the emotions are like in there? And I could have picked any coaching situation. Lucinda, I'm not picking on Sharon Cook, who is our resident Baylor fan at Eastfield College. But I just think that's a great picture that illustrates that. Now, I want you to stop and think. How many of your conversations in the course of the day meet that criteria? Not everyone, but 20%. In some contexts, 50%. I do an awful lot of employee relations work at my role, and so in that context, those employee relations kinds of situations, probably 100% of my conversations. are crucial conversations. And I'm getting some affirmation back, which is a good thing. Yeah, nods. I appreciate that. So when we know what we're talking about, here's our goal. And this is one of the keys, in my mind, of making sense of this. And that is, what you want to do is turn a crucial conversation into a dialogue. And according to the authors and their research, a dialogue is a conversation with two or more people where there's a deep pool of shared meaning, a free flow of meaning between two or more people. Meaning is the important key there. And the authors tell us we must avoid silence and violence. Now, you may have heard of that before as fight or flight. And some of you may have heard of the amygdala hijack. I like that because it's fun to say, although Leon, I trip over it sometimes. So the amygdala hijack. What is the amygdala? See, I told you I trip over it. It's a little part of your brain. It's two parts, situated deep inside the brain. It's got some less scientific names like reptile brain or lizard brain, and those aren't insults. They're references to the fact that from an evolutionary standpoint, this is a very primitive part of the brain. It's one of the best conversations I heard about this was on a website, a little video. The speaker said, the amygdala is that part of the brain when your ancestor 10,000 years ago stepped out of the cave and decided to go gather some berries for breakfast. And he or she is walking along, and all of a sudden, here's a rattling in the bushes. And out pops the head of a hungry saber-toothed tiger. And that tiger is salivating and the saliva is dripping off those tusks, right? And your ancestor decided to fight or flee, right? Run up the tree, or maybe if they were carrying a weapon, decided. And guess what? The fact that you're here today, I'm here today, meant that our ancestor made the correct choice. Whatever it was, we don't know what it was. And the flip side of that is the people who made the wrong choice didn't have any descendants. There are no descendants of people who didn't have pretty well developed amygdalas back then, right? They were all eaten by the saber-toothed tigers. So the fact that we're here today proves that whether we want to admit it or not, we've got a pretty finely tuned amygdala. And think about a recent conversation you've been in that didn't go the way you wanted it to go. Do you have that in mind? Did you get angry and kind of raise your tone of voice? That's not right, that's wrong. What do you mean throwing me under the bus like that? Or did you just clam up? A lot of us do that. And we may pick whether we are silent or violent depending on the facts and the circumstances and who it is. Maybe with our boss we're silent. Maybe with our subordinate we get violent. Okay? So we'll spend a little more time talking about that, but we want to make sure that we avoid those poor choices. So the authors of the book say we got to start with heart. We've got to understand, this is a key point, that we can only work on me because I cannot change you.
Bless you.
Bless you. I cannot change you. I can only change me. That's hard because I know I'm right. And I'm the boss. And you work for me, so you should be doing what I say. Well, you know, that might work in some cultures. I think of a command control structure of the military, perhaps, where you take orders, more or less, without question. That's not the environment we work in. Higher education, for the most part, prides itself on being very collegial. We have this concept called shared governance, at least with the faculty and the administration. Maybe not so much with the staff, but maybe so. We have a lot of committees. We get work done slowly, it turns out sometimes, but we get it done through joint efforts. And to do that, it means we have to work on ourselves. And so we have to focus on increasing that flow, that pool of shared meaning. And when we lose it, because our amygdala takes over, we've got to refocus on that. And so I say, count to 10. Counting to 10, it turns out, is a great way to bring your amygdala hijack back into perspective. Because it takes about 10 seconds for the rest of your brain to catch up with that part that says, run, climb the tree, or pull out the spear and start jabbing. So there are actually some great articles out there in Psychology Today and the Harvard Business Review and almost any journal, management journal that you pick up, that talk about how to keep your brain calm under stress. Some of them advocate deep breathing. Some of them advocate kind of a yoga approach. Many of them say count to 10. So it really works. So I want you to think about adding that tool to your tool chest in order to start with heart. Change yourself, because you're not going to be able to successfully change them, not certainly by willing it. Not by willing it. But you can change yourself. So we're going to start with heart. And then we're going to try to become more perspective. We're going to learn to look. We want to perceive when a conversation turns crucial. Maybe because, like the basketball coach, it's when the jaws get tense, and the veins start to pop out. Maybe the volume raises a little bit. We're going to learn to perceive the signs of the amygdala hijack. For me, I start to feel it right here. It's not a surface feeling. It's more of a, something starting to tighten up a little bit. And I can tell you the last time I felt it, I was on a phone call with someone who was telling me that I needed to do things differently than what I had just been instructed to do. And I said, but your boss just told me that it was to be done this way. And then this other person said, basically, are you questioning me? So I could kind of feel that tension growing, and I didn't want to get crosswise with this person over this issue. It's not a hill I wanted to die on. So I had to try to do some other things that we process it differently. How do you feel when your amygdala starts to take over? Are you in tune with yourself enough to know? Yeah? How do you feel?
The other person can sense it because it comes through my eyeballs. I get a look, the mom look.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. No, but I immediately feel my hearing gets a little bit muffled, and I can start to feel my heart pounding really hard. And sometimes even my eyeballs pulse a little bit. I think that's why they can see. And I have to breathe. Because I suffer from anxiety as well. And so that fight or flight, when it kicks in, it can trigger panic attacks if I'm not careful.
Yeah.
So I have to be very conscious of it.
Thanks for sharing. You see how, if you're sensitive, if you stop and think, you'll be able to figure out, okay, this is happening to me. And if you're watching, if you're looking, You'll probably be able to see it in the other person. I've had people seated in front of me who start to flush. Their skin changes color right in front of me. Or they start to perspire. Ladies, you glisten, right? Men perspire, they sweat. But you know, or they start to do the little white knuckle thing with their hands. Now, I do this as part of my job every day. So about 6 months ago, I got a fidget spinner and set it on the table there that I usually sit across from people. And it's been funny to me, for me to see how many people walk in and say, oh, that's one of those fidget spinners. I don't need that. But before our conversation, boy, they just picked it up and they're spinning it as hard as they can, you know. Because a lot of us need some kind of a manipulative to help us deal with the stuff in our life. You can learn to see that in others. And if you know, now that you know, what that's doing to them, because you know what it does to you, you thought, ooh, maybe we need to go in a different direction. Take this conversation in a different direction. If you're very, very carefully, you can listen to both what's being said and how it's being said, take you back to the coach. You know, there's no question in my mind that was a crucial conversation, not a dialogue that they were having courtside. Okay, the next thing you want to do is to try to make it safe. Make it safe. And I tried this just day before yesterday. I wanted to show that I was very interested in this disgruntled employee's best interest and what their interests and goals were. So we spent some time before we got into the nitty-gritty asking her to tell me a little bit more about that. Why do you think you felt that way? That's very interesting. And she saw me making some notes. So I tried to show respect and interest in what she was saying by doing that. You show you can share mutual purpose, you can share some mutual respect. Now I put a picture up there of, I believe that's a Rice baseball player sliding in home and the umpire is signaling safe, because I thought that picture said a lot about this process. When you go to make it safe for someone, like the runner sliding in there, you may get a little dirty. This is a messy process of working with employees or spouses or kids or parents. You might get dusted up. I don't know that the picture's clear enough on the screen, but there's a little cloud of dust coming up. And you may, if you're the runner, you may lose a little skin in the process as you're sliding in. But is it worth it? Remember, you're the one that's going to have to change. You're the one that's going to have to, because you don't control the other person. You don't. But if you want to be successful in this, and you want people to seek you out and ask your opinion and seek your help, you have to be willing to get skinned up a little bit in this process. So you want to make it safe, make the conversation safe, and then you want to master your story. The book goes into some detail about, we all have stories. Stories about ourselves. And what I took away from that chapter is, don't spend a lot of time trying to guess why it is that Morella said what she said about me. Because if I really listen carefully, she may not have been saying that about me at all. But I assumed that she was making comments about my ancestry and, what kind of shoes my mother wears and, making it an insult. She didn't mean that at all.
I like you anyway.
Yeah, she likes me anyway. Thank you. So don't guess why people do what they're going to do, because it'll just make you sad. make you mad. Instead, assume the best by changing the story. That's going to be really hard. When somebody walks into your office, most of us, because of the amygdala hijack, most of us will have sized that person up within milliseconds. Based on, you all sized me up. If you hadn't heard me before, you had said, there's an old white guy up there, right? Or whatever it is you said. Part of it was, if this is the first time we've met, you were expecting Larry Davis. You know, that's the way it works sometimes. And maybe it was my demeanor as I walked up here. Maybe it's my accent. Any number of things, you had me pegged. We all do. Can we get beyond that and begin to rethink our assumptions about people as they sit in front of us? But this person has a reputation. I've heard that he or she is a troublemaker. They do nothing but complain. And so you let that color the whole conversation. Or do you create a blank slate? To make crucial conversations into dialogues, we're going to have to learn how to make it a blank slate so that we can make it into a dialogue with a deep pool of shared meaning. So, state your path. This is one of the keys of the book and of the process, because you have to get the dialogue to the point where it's okay for you to share your story, share your facts. Ask for the other person. Ask them to, how did that make you feel? How did that make you feel? Talk tentatively. Don't use absolutes at first. Suggest, well, why don't we try this? And if the employee says, yeah, I think I could do that, you've got some common ground, begin to build on that. If they say, I don't think that'll work, well, maybe you can tell me what will work. So you can have that dialogue. And that's encouraging testing. You can say, well, if you're open to that, why don't we try that for a week or 2 weeks or a month or 3 months or whatever the process is, and see how that works. So it's a little bit of a give and take. So I got to tell you this story. I was discussing my opportunity to come and share with you this morning with a colleague at another Metroplex University, who is also a big fan of the book. And he shared with me and gave me permission to share with you the idea that he and his wife went through one 14-year period where her conversations to him on occasion were something like, wouldn't it be nice if we could rip out the old carpet and put in all hardwood floors? And he said, well, yeah, I guess, you know. A little bit later, she might say, wouldn't it be nice if we could strip all the paneling in the house and paint it? Or why don't we paint the brick? Change the exterior color. For 14 years, he said he put up with that. And then he one day got the courage up to say, honey, do you know how that makes me feel when you propose some project that I know you're very interested in and yet we can't afford? And he said, it makes me feel kind of worthless, because I'm not making enough to do the kind of things that clearly you want to do. And she said, that's not at all what I wanted to do. I thought, like you, we were just kind of dreaming about, the future, some house we might have in the future. Wouldn't this look pretty or that look pretty? I didn't mean for it to put you down. I didn't mean for you to feel bad. about it. I think that's, to me, illustrates the fact that if we're not willing to share facts, it took them 14 years to get around to it, and they got a pretty good marriage. How much more so in our office environments where we only casually know people and we interact with probably just the top 5 and the bottom 5% most of the time, because they're the great people or the troublemakers, you know, and how much communication is not happening in those brief periods because we don't take the time and make the effort to state our facts, listen to their facts. State our path, listen to their path. And try to keep the conversation from turning into one that's full of tension and anger and misunderstanding. So, key, probably the meat of the program right there. You can, hopefully, you have the strength of character and personality that you can comfortably explore their paths. It's not about you. It's really about them. So look for agreement by being curious. Build on the areas where you agree. I love this one. Say things like, well, you know, I see things differently. Then, you're wrong. Right? There are better ways to express disagreement than making it that pointed. You can say, that's interesting. Tell me more. It may turn out that you don't disagree that much after you explore the issues. So, finally, there is the, and the book goes a little bit farther than some other things I've read about this. They say, you know, once you've had the conversation and you have started to reach a point where you have some common ground and you feel like, okay, let's talk about this. Maybe the employee agrees, yeah, I think I can be on time for the next 6 weeks. And the supervisor says, I'm willing to start with that. You know, let's build on that. Then we have to memorialize it. You may have to decide how to decide. If it's a group conversation, maybe you decide what it's going to be, a vote. You know, people love democracy because we live in one, so we say majority wins, all in favor, you know, say aye. If it's 2 people, then maybe you have to say, is this okay with you? Is this okay with you? And if they both agree, then finish strong by writing it down, sharing it with everybody, and then following up. I think in my case, the place I've probably dropped the ball the most is in following up. I'll have them say, okay, you agree that you'll let bygones be bygones, and you'll agree and let bygones be bygones. Great. So I sent them both an email and said, we all agreed to let bygones be bygones, and for the next 6 weeks we're going to get along. And I never follow up. So what I've learned to do is about 2 weeks into that 6-week process, I send them another email and say, how are things going? And our campus is certainly small enough, then I can get up out of my chair and go see them and say, how's it going? Are we keeping the faith? And at the end of the 6 weeks, we can kind of have a little celebration. It may just be a little email back to them and say, congratulations, we made it the first 6 weeks, let's get back together and talk about what's next. Over the next 3 months, 9 months, 12 months. It's how we rebuild a relationship that was threatened to be damaged by the lack of communication. And speaking of action, now we're going to take some. Leon, I need the list or the names. Dave, can you make your fishbowl available? I told you I was going to hold up the book one more time.
Are we drawing?
Weird.
Drawing.
You're not in the drawing.
No. We have to be in the drawing.
Leon, it's not that drawing. It's not that drawing. I understand that. So here's what, let's turn this crucial conversation into a dialogue. Except for the name. Last night, because Leon and I had connived. Okay, that's a good Texas word. We put everybody's name. He took the list. His daughter cut the list up. He has, if you're registered, your name is in the list. You must be present to win. And so we're going to let you draw the first name. I have one, and if that person's here, we're done. But I wanted to share this book. It's about 11, maybe 12 bucks on Amazon, so I think almost everybody in the room can afford it. But I wanted to give one of these away. Brand new, it's not my old copy. And the winner is?
Would you like to close your eyes?
Oh, I'm going to do it.
Hey, one of you, just,
I'll let you
and
know.
read the name.
Jamie Jessica.
Yay!
I'm gonna let you give it to somebody else.
Okay,
Because I already have one.
all right.
So-
Draw another, she's got it. And
I have a copy, so I'm not gonna take it. Yay, that's so
yay, what a sweet thing to do.
Tiffany Douglas.
Tiffany Douglas, do you have a copy of the book? All right, yay, congratulations. So, thank you, Leon. Now we're going to take those names out and put the Voya names back in, and don't forget to go by and put your name in the pot for Voya. Now, you know, if you were at my last presentation, you know that I love the Liberating Organizations program, so we're going to practice a little bit more of that. I want you to get with a partner, 2 by 2. It means you're going to have to stand up and move around for a minute. I would prefer that your partner not be somebody that you work with every day. So pick somebody you don't know. You don't know. And you're going to, the two of you are going to do one thing but repeat it. You're going to tell about us, you're going to just simply tell a story about a time when you were not heard, seen, or respected. All of us have those. You can tell it. When you're listening, you're not trying to fix it, you're just listening deeply. And so the only things you can ask are, oh, what else? Go on, tell me more. Up to 3 minutes. And then we're going to switch. So I have my timer right here. So is everyone clear on what we're going to do? We're going to tell us about a time when you were in a crucial conversation. And I've tried to narrow it down to sometime when you felt you were not heard. We're going to do that. Ready? Please get your partner, then I'll start. Yeah, find somebody. And I want you to take another few minutes in conversation, not looking at me, but looking at each other, and discuss what could you have done differently in the crucial conversation you discussed. This is the one that you told about how to change the outcome. Now that you've learned some new tools to do that, what might you have done? Will being mindful about creating dialogues help your communication at work? I know that's a yes or no kind of a question, but I want you to explore that with each other a little bit. And then think about, Monday morning you're back in the office. Will you be able to implement some of this? I'd like you to discuss that. So let's take another 3 minutes and talk about that. I love the hum of this conversation because I know that it means that you guys are engaged. So let's think about the first question. What might you have done differently? We don't want to know specifically, perhaps, the gory details of what you said, but in terms of the tools that we've learned about, how many of you had a tool that you thought, oh, if I used that, maybe it would have helped? And that you'll just tell us about it. What was the tool?
So I'm going to paraphrase.
Okay. Yeah.
Experience. Thank you, Mr. Larry.
Yes, ma'am.
I'm going to paraphrase our experience.
Yes.
Responding versus reacting,
Oh, good.
and taking yourself out of your personal self, out of the situation, and trying to think about the other person's viewpoint, perspective, mindset, which is very, very challenging.
It is. It is.
Especially in the heat of a crucial conversation.
Absolutely. Thank you. I want to get one more from the other side of the room. Who would like to tell us about some tools you thought about using? Right up here on front.
In the conversation I shared with my partner, the experience I had was when I received commentary, I shut down. And I would rather now, I wish that I had asked, and this was my supervisor at the time, for them to tell me more about why they were saying what they did to me, or what they said.
Yeah. Excellent. I think we can all be more mindful if we think about some of these processes. Will being mindful about creating dialogues help your communication at work? Somebody on this side want to comment on that? Don't be bashful.
What did you say? Sorry.
Will being mindful about creating dialogues help your
that
communication at work? Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think a lot, like what they said about, you want me to hold it?
Please.
About responding rather than reacting, and just, keeping that communication open, because we, in our experience, just dealing with people that think we don't know what we're talking about. But if you, keep that conversation open and keep pointing them in the correct direction, hopefully they'll realize, at some point they'll begin to trust you. So, but just backing it up with, like you said, the tools that we have to, this is where I got this information, that kind of thing. So you just have to, keep going, I guess.
Yeah, don't give up. It's a journey, and like the guy sliding in safe, you may feel like you've left a little skin, behind, and may need a little Band-Aid from time to time. That's okay. Those are the marks of a professional. So what about Monday morning? You've had all weekend, you haven't thought about this again, and you're faced, hopefully not right at 8 o'clock, but maybe 9 o'clock, your first crucial conversation. How are you going to implement this on Monday? What are you going to do? Somebody willing to share with the group? Anyone?
Larry, we talked about concentrating. Oh, I don't read the mic.
All right, well, speak up. Yeah, because we're taping.
Sorry. Thank you. We talked about sticking with the facts and what is, more so than the emotions. And so if you can weed out how I'm feeling about this situation and go, okay, here's the facts, here's what's really real in this situation, and then assess the facts so that you can not be in the thick of the emotions of it. So that's what we said we could start on Monday.
That's great. That's great. And then knowing me, I'm going to run to the other side of the room. So somebody over here, be ready. Who's going to talk? Who's going to talk? I like the people put their heads down. They don't want to talk. Yes.
My thought is not necessarily at work, but at home I have a 5-year-old and 2-year-old, and my 5-year-old is going on 15.
Yes.
So the thought to stop when she's back talking and count for a second to cool down, I think is something that will help me more with the kids at home.
Excellent, excellent. You know, start with the kids, start with the dogs. You know, it will help you because practice will become part of your way of doing business. None of us who use the book's tools were great at it at first. That's why I keep a very well thumbed copy of the book, not prominently displayed on my desk, but it's close at hand so I can pull it out and remind myself. And now, my wife said, as I left to come here this morning, she said, you know, you're better at this than you used to be. I take that as a very great compliment. Very great compliment. She who knows me best says, I'm getting better. Doesn't mean I'm there yet, but little by little, practice by practice, conversation by conversation. And it's really in our own best interest to do this. And soon you'll have a reputation of being someone who's trustworthy, someone I want to go to and discuss my problems when they're little problems, which is what all the HR folks want, is let's deal with them early, you know, before people have gotten that relationship to the point where it's past the point of no return. There are no good options out there, but there are a lot of good options early. Thank you so much for your attention and conversation, and let me leave you with, may all your crucial conversations be dialogues. Thank you.